The golden sun shone brightly over Beverly Hills, casting light on the contrast of wealth and disparity. The pristine streets, lined with palm trees and luxury boutiques, hummed with the sound of high-end sports cars and laughter spilling from upscale cafes. Among this scene of opulence, a man in tattered clothing ambled along the sidewalk, his appearance an anomaly that drew judgmental glances and whispers from passers-by. His shoes were worn, with soles barely holding together, and his faded shirt hung loosely over his frame. The disheveled baseball cap pulled low over his forehead did little to shield him from the weight of curious and disdainful stares. Despite his ragged attire, there was a quiet confidence in his stride, a demeanor that seemed almost out of place given his appearance. This man, unknown to the world around him, was Elon Musk, one of the wealthiest individuals on the planet. Today, however, he wasn't the billionaire entrepreneur known for revolutionizing industries. Disguised as a homeless person, Musk was embarking on a daring social experiment to test humanity's kindness and the integrity of the banking system. Ahead of him loomed the impressive facade of Summit Bank, a pillar of financial prestige in Beverly Hills. Its towering glass doors gleamed under the midday sun, reflecting an image of unyielding success. Musk paused briefly, taking in the opulence, before stepping inside. His heart beat faster with a mix of anticipation and curiosity, though his face betrayed none of it. The interior was nothing short of majestic. Polished marble floors stretched out in every direction, their surface so glossy it mirrored the intricate chandeliers hanging from vaulted ceilings. Wealthy patrons sipped complimentary espressos in plush leather chairs while impeccably dressed staff attended to their every need. Musk's entrance disrupted the seamless flow of this luxurious environment. Conversations faltered as heads turned in unison to assess the unexpected visitor. Some glanced away quickly, feigning indifference, while others exchanged whispers that carried the weight of judgment. Musk felt the collective gaze but remained unbothered, his focus sharp as he approached the reception desk. Behind the counter stood Marilyn, a middle-aged woman with a perfectly coiffed blonde bob and a name tag pinned neatly to her tailored blazer. Her polished exterior and icy demeanor projected an air of authority. She eyed Musk's appearance with barely concealed disdain, her lips curling into a tight, practiced smile. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone laced with skepticism. "I'd like to open a basic checking account," Musk replied evenly, his voice calm but firm. He reached into his pocket and placed a crumpled $20 bill on the counter. Marilyn's professional facade momentarily cracked as she blinked in surprise. Her eyes flicked to the bill, then back to Musk. After a brief pause, she leaned in slightly, her voice lowering as though addressing a wayward child. "Our minimum deposit is $500, she said, enunciating each word slowly. "Perhaps you should try somewhere else." The sting of rejection wasn't new to Musk, but it hit differently in this moment. It wasn't the words that hurt, it was the sheer ease with which they were delivered. The condescension in Marilyn's tone, the dismissive glance, and the faint chuckle from a nearby patron amplified the weight of societal assumptions. Musk's eyes swept across the room. He noted the subtle smirks exchanged between staff and the way some customers avoided looking at him entirely, as though his presence was a blemish on their otherwise polished world. Yet amidst the sea of disdain, one face stood out. Seated at a desk near the far corner was Clara, a young trainee who couldn't have been more than 25. Her dark curls framed a face marked by an expression of unease. Unlike the others, her gaze wasn't dismissive or mocking. Instead, it held a flicker of discomfort, as though she was internally grappling with the injustice unfolding before her. Marilyn's voice cut through his thoughts. "If you're not here for legitimate business, I'll have to call security," she said, her smile now gone entirely. Before Musk could respond, a uniformed security guard approached, his presence looming. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. Musk nodded, suppressing the urge to argue. His experiment wasn't about confrontation, it was about observation. As he turned to leave, his eyes met Clara's for the briefest of moments. There was something in her expression, a mix of apology and defiance, that struck a chord within him. It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant a seed of hope amidst the disheartening encounter. Stepping back into the blinding sunlight, Musk felt a storm of emotions brewing. He had anticipated this reaction, knowing full well the biases that governed institutions and individuals alike. Yet experiencing it firsthand was another matter entirely. It wasn't just a test of the bank's policies, it was a glimpse into a reality faced by countless others who lacked privilege. He found a bench near the bank's entrance and sat down, letting the weight of the moment settle. As customers filed in and out of the building, their polished shoes clicking against the marble steps, Musk's mind raced with thoughts. His disguise had stripped him of his usual status, offering an unfiltered view of the world he had long sought to understand. Inside the bank, Clara struggled to concentrate on her work. Marilyn's laughter echoed faintly as she recounted the scene to a colleague, her words dripping with mockery. Clara clenched her fists under her desk, fighting the urge to speak up. She joined Summit Bank with the hope of making a difference, of building a career where she could help people. Yet moments like this left her questioning her path. The system she had once admired now felt like a gilded cage, its shiny exterior masking the rot within. As the afternoon wore on, Clara's thoughts kept returning to the man in tattered clothes. Who was he? What had brought him here? And most importantly, why had she stayed silent when she knew what was happening was wrong? By the time the clock struck 5, signaling the end of the workday, Clara had made up her mind. Tomorrow, she would find a way to make things right, even if it meant risking her own position. Little did she know, her small act of defiance would set in motion a chain of events that would change not only her life but the lives of countless others. Outside, Musk remained seated on the bench, watching the world move around him. Despite the sting of rejection, a faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He had seen something today, a glimmer of humanity in an otherwise cold environment. And that glimmer, however small, was enough to keep him moving forward. The sun rose steadily over Beverly Hills, painting the city's skyline in soft hues of orange and gold. For Clara, the new day brought with it an unsettling weight. The image of the man in tattered clothes lingered in her mind. His quiet dignity in the face of blatant rejection was something she couldn't forget. The thought of her own inaction gnawed at her conscience, leaving her restless and distracted. As she stepped out of her apartment that morning, Clara resolved to take a different path. She couldn't erase what had happened, but she could take a stand, however small it might be. Arriving at Summit Bank, she braced herself for another day of polished smiles and subtle condescension. She quickly scanned the area as she walked through the grand glass doors. There was no sign of him. Disappointment settled in her chest as she made her way to her desk, but she pushed the thought aside, diving into the day's tasks. It wasn't until her lunch break that she spotted him again. Seated on the same bench outside the bank, the man appeared calm, almost contemplative, as he observed the bustling street before him. Clara hesitated for a moment, clutching her sandwich tightly, before mustering the courage to approach. "Excuse me," she began, her voice soft but steady. The man looked up, his expression neutral but curious. "You work at the bank," he said. It wasn't a question, but an observation, his sharp eyes recognizing her from the previous day. Clara nodded, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Yes. I wanted to apologize for how you were treated yesterday. It wasn't right. And I regret not saying anything." For a moment, the man said nothing, his gaze piercing as though he were assessing her sincerity. Then, his expression softened, and he nodded. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Encouraged by his response, Clara sat down on the bench beside him. "I've been thinking about it all night," she admitted. "The way we treated you, it's not the kind of environment I want to be part of." She hesitated before adding, "When I joined the bank, I thought I'd be helping people. But now, it feels like we only serve the wealthy." The man's lips quirked into a faint smile. "You're not alone in feeling that way. Sometimes, systems lose sight of their purpose. It takes people like you to remind them." Clara's brow furrowed. "People like me?" He nodded. "People who see the cracks in the system and aren't afraid to call them out." Sometimes, change starts with one person willing to take a risk. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Clara's curiosity grew. You talk like someone who's seen a lot of cracks in a lot of systems. The man chuckled, a deep, quiet sound. Let's just say I've spent my fair share of time trying to fix them. He extended a hand. My name's Elon. Clara shook his hand, surprised by the strength in his grip. Clara, she replied. Their conversation continued, meandering from topics of inequality in corporate culture to broader themes of kindness and humanity. Musk listened intently as Clara shared her frustrations with the bank's elitism and her growing disillusionment with the industry. She spoke of her dreams to make a difference, to create an environment where everyone was treated with dignity regardless of their background or bank balance. Musk's eyes sparkled with interest as she spoke. You have a strong sense of purpose, he said. Don't let it get buried under bureaucracy and cynicism. The world needs people like you who still believe in doing the right thing. Clara blushed at the compliment but couldn't help the doubt that crept into her voice. But what can one person do? Especially in a place like this? She gestured toward the imposing bank building behind them. Musk leaned forward slightly, his tone low but firm. You'd be surprised what one person can do. Sometimes, all it takes is a single act of defiance to set something bigger in motion. Clara's mind buzzed with his words, but before she could respond, Musk stood up. Thank you for taking the time to talk, Clara, he said, his voice warm. I'm glad to know there are still people who care. Wait, she said, rising to her feet. Will I see you again? Musk smiled, a hint of mystery in his expression. Perhaps. Take care of yourself, Clara. And with that, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Clara stood there for a moment, her thoughts racing. She felt a strange mix of hope and responsibility, as though their brief conversation had planted a seed that she couldn't ignore. Back at the bank, the atmosphere felt heavier than usual. Marilyn's voice carried through the air, recounting the previous day's incident with exaggerated amusement to another staff member. Can you believe he thought he could open an account here? With $20, she said, her laughter sharp and grating. Clara clenched her fists beneath her desk. She wanted to speak up, to call out Marilyn's cruelty, but she hesitated. Musk's words replayed in her mind. Sometimes, all it takes is a single act of defiance. The rest of the day passed in a blur, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something within her had shifted. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of her interaction with Musk. His confidence, his perspective, his belief in the power of one person, it all resonated deeply. By the time morning came, Clara had made up her mind. She didn't know what her next step would be, but she knew she couldn't continue on the same path. If there was a way to change things, even in small ways, she was determined to find it. Unbeknownst to her, Elon Musk was thinking about Clara too. As he sat in a quiet corner of a coffee shop, reviewing his notes and reflecting on his experiment, her words stayed with him. There was potential in her, a spark of courage and integrity that he rarely encountered. He couldn't predict where her journey would lead, but he had a feeling it was only just beginning. For both of them, the encounter on the bench was more than a fleeting moment. It was the start of something far greater than either could imagine. The morning sun streamed through the glass facade of Summit Bank, illuminating the pristine marble floors and the bustling activity of staff preparing for the day. Clara sat at her desk, her heart pounding as she rehearsed her plan. The events of the past 2 days had sparked a fire within her, a determination to take action despite the potential consequences. She had spent the night agonizing over the decision. Opening an account for the man in ragged clothes, now revealed as Elon Musk in disguise, had seemed impossible under the bank's rigid rules. Yet, Clara couldn't shake the conviction that what she was about to do was right. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, she accessed the bank system. Musk's information was still logged from his initial visit, and Clara used her employee privileges to override the minimum deposit requirement. With shaking hands, she input the necessary details, bypassing protocols designed to deter precisely this kind of act. Her heart raced as she completed the process. She printed out the account confirmation, slipped it into an envelope, addressing it to Elon M. It was a small gesture, but one that carried immense risk. If caught, she knew she could face disciplinary action, or worse, lose her job. Still, Clara felt an unshakable resolve. Doing the right thing, she realized, often came with a price. The following afternoon, the familiar figure of Elon Musk entered the bank, still wearing his unassuming attire. This time, he exuded an air of quiet confidence, his sharp gaze scanning the room. Clara's breath caught as their eyes met. She gave him a subtle nod, signaling that his account had been reopened. "Mr. M," Clara called softly, careful not to draw unnecessary attention. Musk approached her desk, his expression neutral but curious. "I took care of it," she whispered, sliding the envelope across the desk. "Your account is active." Musk's brow lifted in surprise, but he said nothing. Instead, he opened the envelope, scanned its contents, and gave her a small, appreciative nod. "Thank you, Clara," he said quietly. But their exchange hadn't gone unnoticed. Marilyn, ever alert for what she deemed irregularities, approached with her signature condescending smile. "What's going on here?" she asked, her tone sweet yet accusatory. Clara's throat tightened. "Just helping a client," she said, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. Marilyn's gaze shifted to Musk, her lips curling in disdain. "I thought we'd already dealt with you," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm not sure how you got back in here, but—" "Actually," Musk interrupted, his voice calm yet commanding, "I'm here to make a deposit." Marilyn blinked, her composure faltering for a moment. "A deposit?" she repeated, her disbelief evident. Musk reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a neatly folded stack of bills. With deliberate precision, he placed it on the counter. $10,000, he said simply, the words hanging in the air like a challenge. The room fell silent. Even the faint hum of conversations and the click of keyboards seemed to pause. All eyes turned toward the unassuming man and the stack of cash that gleamed on the polished counter. Marilyn's mouth opened and closed, her usually sharp tongue momentarily muted. "I believe this meets your minimum deposit requirement?" Musk added, his tone polite but pointed. Marilyn's face flushed red as she scrambled to regain control. She fumbled with the bills, quickly counting them before entering the transaction into the system. Clara watched the scene unfold with a mixture of awe and trepidation. As Musk's deposit was finalized, Mr. Reynolds, the bank manager, emerged from his office. His sharp eyes scanned the lobby, narrowing as they settled on the unusual commotion. He strode toward the group, his authoritative presence immediately commanding attention. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice firm. Marilyn, eager to deflect blame, gestured toward Musk. "This client just made a significant deposit," she said, her tone laced with incredulity. Clara assisted him, "but there's something unusual about the situation." Reynolds turned his gaze to Clara, his expression unreadable. "Clara, is this true?" Clara swallowed hard but stood her ground. "Yes, Mr. Reynolds," she said. Mr. M's account was opened following the bank's procedures. "Procedures?" Reynolds repeated, his voice low but edged with suspicion. "I'd like to know exactly how this account was approved, considering our minimum deposit policy." Clara felt the weight of every gaze in the room, but she refused to back down. "I used my discretion," she said firmly. Mr. M's intention was clear, and I believed it was the right thing to do. Reynolds' eyes narrowed. "You believed?" Before the tension could escalate further, Musk stepped forward. "If I may," he said, his voice cutting through the charged atmosphere, "Clara's actions reflect precisely what a bank should value: integrity and a willingness to serve clients regardless of appearances." Reynolds looked taken aback, his stern demeanor wavering under Musk's calm yet authoritative tone. "And who exactly are you?" he asked, suspicion lacing his words. Musk's lips curled into a faint smile. "Someone who believes in rewarding courage and fairness," he said cryptically. With that, he turned to Clara and handed her a small folded note. "Thank you," he said, his voice warm but firm. "Your courage will not be forgotten." Clara took the note, her fingers trembling slightly. She watched as Musk walked out of the bank, his unassuming figure disappearing into the bustling streets once more. The room remained silent, the weight of his presence lingering even after he was gone. Later, when Clara was alone at her desk, she unfolded the note. Written in neat, deliberate handwriting were the words, "Your courage will not be forgotten. Keep believing in what's right." A sense of quiet determination settled over her. Clara didn't know what Musk's next move would be, but she felt certain that this was far from the end of their story. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope, not just for herself, but for the possibility of change in a system that desperately needed it. The morning at Summit Bank began as usual, with staff preparing for another routine day of catering to affluent clients. Clara, still recovering from the events surrounding Elon Musk's visit, felt an underlying tension in the air. She had no idea what Musk's next move might be, but a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that his story at the bank wasn't over. By mid-morning, that premonition was proven correct. The sound of the grand glass doors swinging open drew everyone's attention. Standing in the entrance was Elon Musk, though he was unrecognizable from his previous visits. Gone were the tattered clothes and subdued demeanor. In their place was a man dressed in a sharp, impeccably tailored suit that exuded authority and confidence. His presence seemed to command the room instantly. Marilyn, who had been chatting with a client, froze mid-sentence, her face draining of color. The entire lobby fell silent, whispers rippling as staff and customers alike stared at the unexpected visitor. Musk strode across the marble floor with purpose, his gaze fixed ahead. As he reached the reception desk, he glanced briefly at Marilyn, who now looked as though she might faint. "I'm here to see Mr. Reynolds," Musk said evenly. Marilyn stammered, fumbling with the phone. "Why yes, of course," she managed before hastily dialing the manager's office. Moments later, Mr. Reynolds emerged, his brow furrowed in curiosity. "Mr. Reynolds," Musk greeted him with a polite nod. "I believe we need to have a conversation. Privately." The bank manager hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he studied Musk. Though the man's polished appearance suggested importance, Reynolds couldn't place him. Still, the commanding tone left little room for argument. "This way," Reynolds said, motioning toward his office. Musk followed, his calm demeanor unshaken by the curious and bewildered stares of those he passed. Clara watched from her desk, her pulse quickening. She had a feeling something monumental was about to happen. Inside the office, Reynolds gestured for Musk to take a seat. "So, Mr." he prompted, his tone guarded. "Musk," came the reply. The name lingered in the air for a moment before recognition dawned on Reynolds' face. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Elon Musk," he repeated, as though saying it aloud would make the revelation less surreal. Musk nodded. "The very same. Though I suspect you didn't recognize me during my previous visits." Reynolds blinked, his mind racing to piece together what he was hearing. "Previous visits?" Leaning forward slightly, Musk rested his elbows on the desk. "I've been testing banks like yours," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I wanted to see how your staff treated individuals who didn't fit the mold of your usual clientele." Reynolds' complexion paled. I see," he said, though his tone suggested he did not see at all. Musk's gaze remained unwavering. "What I witnessed here was, frankly, disappointing. Your team, with one notable exception, displayed condescension, arrogance, and a lack of basic humanity. It was a stark reminder of how far removed institutions like this can be from the principles they claim to uphold." Reynolds opened his mouth to respond, but Musk held up a hand to stop him. "However," he continued, "not all of your staff failed the test. One employee showed genuine integrity and compassion, even when it came at a personal risk." Clara's face flashed in Reynolds' mind, and he frowned. "Clara?" he asked tentatively. Musk smiled faintly. "Yes. Clara." He leaned back in his chair. Her actions are the only reason I'm here today in this capacity. Otherwise, would have walked away and left this institution to its fate. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Musk, I assure you, this bank is committed to providing the highest standard of service. Spare me the platitudes, Musk interrupted, his tone firm. I'm not interested in excuses. I'm interested in change. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Which is why I've decided to acquire Summit Bank. Reynolds stared at him, mouth agape. You're acquiring the bank? The paperwork is already in motion, Musk confirmed. This institution will operate under a new vision, one that prioritizes integrity, accessibility, and the kind of values Clara exemplifies. When Musk and Reynolds emerged from the office, the lobby fell silent once again. Marilyn's face was a mix of confusion and unease as she watched the two men approach the center of the room. Musk's presence seemed larger than life as he addressed the gathered staff. Good morning, he began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the space. Some of you may know me, but for those who don't, my name is Elon Musk. Over the past few weeks, I've been visiting this bank in disguise, observing how it operates. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Marilyn's face turned crimson as realization dawned. What I saw was troubling, Musk continued. But within that, I also saw a glimmer of hope. One employee, Clara, demonstrated the kind of character and integrity that this institution sorely needs. He turned to Clara, who was frozen in place, her cheeks flushed. Clara, he said, his tone softening, your actions reminded me of what's possible when people lead with their values. For that reason, I'd like to offer you a leadership role in an initiative I'm launching to revolutionize the banking industry. The room erupted in whispers, staff exchanging incredulous glances. Clara's heart raced as she processed his words. Me, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Musk nodded. Yes, you. Your courage and conviction deserve to be rewarded, and I believe you're exactly the kind of leader this industry needs. Tears pricked at Clara's eyes as the weight of the moment settled over her. For so long, she had doubted her ability to make a difference, but now, the world's most influential innovator was telling her otherwise. Marilyn, still reeling, tried to interject. Mr. Musk, if I may. Musk's gaze snapped to her, silencing her instantly. You may not, he said bluntly before turning back to Clara. So, what do you say? Clara took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had. Yes, she said firmly. I'd be honored. The staff looked on, a mixture of shock, admiration, and envy etched across their faces. Musk smiled, extending his hand. As Clara shook it, she felt a surge of confidence she hadn't known she possessed. This is just the beginning, Musk said, his voice filled with promise. Together, we're going to change everything. Clara stepped into her new role with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Her heart swelled with pride at the opportunity Musk had given her, but the weight of her responsibility loomed large. She wasn't just working at a bank anymore, she was working to redefine what a bank could be. Remember, Musk had told her on her first day, it's not about following the rules for the sake of them. It's about creating a system that serves people first. Those words replayed in her mind as she surveyed the office of Brookfield Community Bank, the struggling institution Musk had tasked her with transforming. The building's faded signage and dated interior were a stark contrast to the polished halls of Summit Bank. Employees shuffled through their tasks with visible fatigue, their expressions marked by resignation. Welcome, Ms. Clara, said Dan, the branch manager, a man in his late 40s whose gray-streaked hair suggested he'd seen his fair share of struggles. We've heard a lot about the changes coming. The team is apprehensive. Clara smiled warmly, sensing the underlying tension. Thank you, Dan. I understand change can be unsettling, but I'm here to work with you, not against you. Together, we can make this bank a place the community can trust and rely on. Dan nodded, though his tight smile betrayed his skepticism. Clara couldn't blame him. Years of bureaucratic mismanagement had eroded morale, leaving the staff cynical and the customers distrustful. Turning this around wouldn't be easy, but Clara was determined to try. Her first move was to observe and listen. Clara spent days shadowing employees, sitting in on meetings, and, most importantly, talking to customers. Their grievances painted a grim picture: loan applications denied without explanation, long wait times, and staff who seemed indifferent to their struggles. One woman, Maria, who owned a small bakery, shared her story with Clara. "I came here for a loan to expand my shop," Maria said, her voice tinged with frustration. "They rejected me without even explaining why. I felt like I wasn't worth their time." That hit Clara hard. She remembered why she had joined this initiative in the first place: to create a system that valued people over profit. Armed with this insight, she began crafting her plan. The changes started small. Clara introduced daily team huddles to foster open communication among staff. She implemented empathy training sessions, encouraging employees to view each customer interaction as an opportunity to make a difference. At first, the reception was lukewarm. Many staff members were wary, unsure if these initiatives would lead to tangible improvements or if they were just more corporate gimmicks. "Why bother?" one teller muttered during a break. "Nothing ever really changes around here." Clara overheard the comment but chose not to confront the employee directly. Instead, she addressed the entire team at their next meeting. "I know many of you are skeptical," she said, her tone candid. "I would be too if I'd seen years of broken promises. But I'm asking you to trust me, not because I have all the answers, but because I'm willing to work alongside you to find them." Her sincerity struck a chord. While some remained hesitant, others began to approach her with ideas and suggestions. Clara made it a point to act on these, showing the team that their voices mattered. The next hurdle was addressing the outdated systems that had plagued the bank's operations for years. Long wait times and frequent errors had eroded customer trust, and Clara knew this had to change. She worked with Musk's team to introduce a streamlined digital platform, allowing customers to access their accounts, apply for loans, and receive personalized financial advice with ease. But implementing the technology wasn't enough. Clara insisted on holding workshops to teach both staff and customers how to use the new system. For many in the community, this was their first encounter with digital banking, and Clara wanted to ensure they felt supported every step of the way. "It's not just about convenience," she explained during one session. "It's about giving you control over your finances, empowering you to make decisions that improve your life." The workshops were a hit, and slowly, the community began to warm to the changes. Customers who had once walked into the bank with frustration now left with smiles, their problems solved efficiently and with genuine care. One of Clara's most ambitious initiatives was introducing a microloan program tailored to small business owners like Maria. The program offered fair interest rates and focused on helping entrepreneurs grow their ventures rather than maximizing profit for the bank. Clara personally reviewed the first round of applications, ensuring the process was transparent and accessible. When Maria's application came through, Clara approved it immediately. A week later, she visited Maria's bakery to see the impact firsthand. The shop was bustling, the aroma of freshly baked bread filling the air. "Thank you, Clara," Maria said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "This loan means everything to me. You've given me the chance to build something for my family." Moments like this reminded Clara why she had taken on this challenge. The work was exhausting, but it was also deeply rewarding. Not everyone welcomed the changes, however. A few longtime employees resisted, clinging to the old ways. One senior banker, Todd, confronted Clara during a staff meeting. "I don't see why we need all these changes," he said, his tone dismissive. "The old system worked fine. Why fix what isn't broken?" Clara met his gaze calmly. "Todd, with all due respect, the old system wasn't working. It left customers feeling ignored and employees feeling undervalued. We're not fixing something that isn't broken, we're rebuilding something that never worked properly in the first place." Her response earned a smattering of applause from the team, and Todd, though clearly annoyed, begrudgingly backed down. 6 months later, the transformation was undeniable. The bank's interior had been revamped to create a welcoming, modern atmosphere. The staff, once weary and disheartened, now worked with a renewed sense of purpose. And most importantly, the community's trust had been restored. Customers frequently praised the respectful service and inclusive policies. One elderly man, Mr. Jenkins, summed it up best. "This place feels different," he told Clara one afternoon. "It's not just a bank anymore. It feels like it's part of the community again." Clara's heart swelled at his words. She knew there was still much work to be done, but moments like this reaffirmed that they were on the right path. Musk visited the bank shortly after the project's completion. He walked through the bustling lobby, taking in the vibrant energy that now filled the space. When he met with Clara, his expression was one of quiet pride. "You've done remarkable work here," he said. "This bank is more than just a financial institution now. It's a symbol of what's possible when we put people first." Clara smiled, though she couldn't hide her exhaustion. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "But seeing the difference we've made, it's worth it." Musk nodded. "This is just the beginning," he said, his tone filled with conviction. "The real challenge is scaling this success. Are you ready?" Clara took a deep breath, the weight of his words sinking in. "I'm ready," she said firmly. As she watched Musk leave, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The mission was far from over, but for the first time, she truly believed in the possibility of creating a better, more equitable system, one bank at a time. The success of the community bank marked a pivotal moment in Clara's journey. What had once seemed like a daunting experiment had turned into a beacon of hope, proving that banking could indeed serve the greater good. But Clara knew this was only the first step. To truly transform the industry, they needed to scale the model nationwide. "It's not going to be easy," Musk warned during one of their strategy meetings. His tone was serious, but his eyes sparkled with determination. "But then, nothing worth doing ever is." Clara nodded, her own resolve unwavering. "We've proven it can work," she said. "Now, it's time to show the rest of the country what's possible." The first step was assembling a team of like-minded individuals who shared their vision. Clara reached out to Marcus, a passionate community organizer she'd met during her work at the community bank. Marcus had spent years advocating for underserved neighborhoods, and his deep understanding of local needs made him an invaluable ally. "You're trying to rebuild trust where there hasn't been any for decades," Marcus said when Clara pitched the idea to him over coffee. "That's a tall order. But if anyone can pull it off, it's you." With Marcus on board, Clara began recruiting others, social workers, tech innovators, financial educators, and even a few former bankers who had grown disillusioned with the traditional system. The diversity of their experiences created a dynamic team that was united by a shared purpose: to make banking accessible, respectful, and inclusive for all. Their first major initiative was the launch of mobile banking units designed to serve rural areas. These sleek, solar-powered vans were equipped with cutting-edge technology, allowing them to provide financial services in places where no bank branches existed. Customers could open accounts, apply for microloans, and receive financial literacy training, all from the comfort of their own communities. Clara and Marcus traveled to small towns and remote villages, introducing the units to skeptical locals. At first, the response was tepid. Years of neglect and broken promises had left many residents wary of outsiders offering help. But Clara's team was patient. They held town hall meetings, listened to concerns, and tailored their services to meet the specific needs of each community. In one particularly remote area, Clara met an elderly farmer named Mr. Lawson. He had lived his entire life without access to formal banking, relying instead on informal networks that often left him vulnerable to exploitation. "Why should I trust your bank?" he asked, his weathered face lined with skepticism. Clara knelt beside him, meeting his gaze. "Because we're not just here to take your money," she said. "We're here to help you keep it, grow it, and use it to build a better future for your family. Let us prove it to you." Moved by her sincerity, Mr. Lawson agreed to give the mobile unit a chance. Within weeks, he had opened his first savings account and used a small loan to repair his equipment, increasing his farm's productivity. His success story quickly spread, and soon, the mobile unit was serving dozens of families in the area. The initiative's early success drew praise from some quarters, but it also attracted criticism. Established banks, threatened by the disruptive model, began pushing back. Industry leaders dismissed Clara's efforts as idealistic and unsustainable, questioning whether her approach could work on a larger scale. Clara felt the sting of their words but refused to let it deter her. "If they're criticizing us, it means we're making an impact," she told Marcus during a late-night strategy session. Musk echoed her sentiments. "Resistance means we're shaking up the status quo," he said during a video call. "Keep going. They're scared, and they should be." Despite the resistance, the team pressed on, expanding their operations to more states. Each new location brought its own set of challenges. In one region, local regulations slowed the rollout of the mobile units. In another, established banks launched aggressive marketing campaigns to undermine Clara's efforts. "They're spreading misinformation about us," Marcus said, frustration evident in his voice. "They're telling people we're here to steal their money." Clara sighed but remained composed. "We can't control what they say," she replied. "But we can control what we do. Let's focus on delivering results. Actions speak louder than words." One of the most ambitious projects involved partnering with schools to offer financial literacy programs. Clara believed that educating the next generation was key to breaking the cycle of financial exclusion. The programs, designed for students of all ages, taught practical skills like budgeting, saving, and understanding credit. In one high school, Clara met a bright teenager named Aaliyah who dreamed of becoming an entrepreneur. "I want to open my own bakery someday," Aaliyah said during a workshop. "But I don't even know where to start." Clara smiled. "That's why we're here. Let's start by helping you build a plan." By the end of the program, Aaliyah had not only created a business plan but also opened a savings account to fund her dream. Stories like hers became a powerful testament to the impact of Clara's work. As the initiative gained momentum, Clara found herself facing new challenges. The demands of leading a nationwide effort were relentless, and the weight of expectations often felt overwhelming. Late nights and early mornings became the norm, and Clara struggled to find a balance between her professional responsibilities and personal well-being. During one particularly exhausting week, Musk called her for a check-in. "You're doing incredible work, Clara," he said. "But remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Take care of yourself. The mission needs you at your best." His words served as a much-needed reminder. Clara began delegating more responsibilities to her team, trusting them to carry the vision forward. Marcus, in particular, stepped up as a key leader, his passion and dedication inspiring those around him. By the end of the first year, the results spoke for themselves. The mobile units had served thousands of customers, the financial literacy programs had reached hundreds of schools, and dozens of small businesses had flourished thanks to the microloan initiative. Media outlets began covering the story, praising the team's innovative approach and highlighting the tangible benefits for communities. One evening, as Clara reviewed the year's achievements, Musk called to congratulate her. "You've turned a vision into a movement," he said. "But this is just the beginning. There's still so much more to do." Clara smiled, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "I'm ready," she said. As she hung up, Clara looked out at the city lights, reflecting on how far they had come. The journey ahead would undoubtedly be filled with more obstacles, but she felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just changing the way banks operated, they were changing lives. And that, Clara realized, was worth every challenge they faced. Clara's journey had reached a new frontier. After the success of expanding the banking model across the United States, the team set its sights on a global mission. There were millions of people in underserved regions worldwide who lacked access to basic financial services, and Clara was determined to bring the revolution to them. The first international stop was Kenya, a country where many relied on informal financial systems and mobile money platforms to navigate daily life. Clara recognized this as an opportunity to innovate further. With Musk's support, she spearheaded a pilot program that combined mobile banking units with local support centers. These centers would offer not just financial services but also education and community resources tailored to the unique needs of the region. Upon her arrival in Kenya, Clara was greeted by a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The local community had seen numerous initiatives come and go, often leaving little lasting impact. Clara's team, however, approached the project with humility and a commitment to listening first. "We're not here to impose a solution," Clara told a gathering of local leaders. "We're here to learn what you need and to work with you to build something sustainable." One of the first people to embrace the program was Aisha, a farmer who had spent years struggling to expand her small agricultural business. Without access to formal banking, she had relied on informal loans with exorbitant interest rates, often putting her harvest at risk. Through the pilot program, Aisha opened her first bank account and received a microloan to purchase better equipment and seeds. Within months, her farm's yield had doubled, and she had begun supplying produce to local markets. "I used to dream of growing my farm," Aisha said during a community meeting. "Now, it's not just a dream. It's my reality." Stories like Aisha's reaffirmed Clara's commitment to the mission. Each success reminded her of the transformative power of financial inclusion and its ability to uplift entire communities. The pilot program's success in Kenya caught the attention of global organizations dedicated to financial inclusion. Clara was invited to speak at an international summit focused on bridging the gap for underserved populations. The event, held in Geneva, brought together leaders, innovators, and policymakers from around the world. Standing on the stage in front of a packed auditorium, Clara felt a surge of nervous energy. She had spent weeks preparing her speech, knowing this was an opportunity to share the vision on a global scale. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Today, I want to talk about the transformative power of ethical banking. Not just as a concept, but as a practice that can change lives." She shared Aisha's story, painting a vivid picture of how access to financial services could unlock potential and empower individuals to build brighter futures. Clara's words resonated deeply with the audience, her passion evident in every sentence. "This isn't just about banking," she said, her voice rising with conviction. "It's about dignity. It's about creating systems that don't exclude but include, that don't exploit but empower. And it's about proving that we can build a world where opportunity is truly for everyone." As she concluded, the room erupted into applause. Clara's message had struck a chord, inspiring attendees to consider how they could contribute to the movement. After the summit, several global organizations approached Clara with offers to collaborate. NGOs, tech companies, and even governments expressed interest in adopting and scaling the model she had pioneered. Clara was thrilled but cautious. Scaling globally presented challenges far more complex than anything she had encountered before. One of the first partnerships was with a technology firm that specialized in blockchain. Together, they developed a secure and transparent system for managing microloans and savings accounts, ensuring that even the most remote users could access their funds with ease. Another partnership involved an NGO focused on education. They worked with Clara's team to integrate financial literacy programs into schools across Kenya and neighboring countries. These programs aimed to equip young people with the knowledge and skills they needed to make informed financial decisions. Clara's work in Kenya soon expanded to other parts of Africa, as well as Southeast Asia and South America. Each region brought its own set of challenges. In rural India, she encountered cultural barriers that required a deeper understanding of local traditions. In urban slums in Southeast Asia, infrastructure limitations demanded creative solutions. One of the most significant breakthroughs came in Brazil, where Clara partnered with indigenous communities to establish banking hubs that respected their unique cultural practices. Rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all approach, Clara's team co-designed the services with community leaders, ensuring they met the specific needs of the people they served. Back in the U.S., Musk continued to provide guidance and support, though he largely stayed out of the spotlight. During one of their check-ins, he commended Clara's ability to adapt and innovate. "What you're doing isn't just changing lives," he said. "It's changing minds. You're showing people that ethical banking isn't just possible, it's essential." Clara smiled, though the weight of the work often felt overwhelming. "It's not easy," she admitted. "Every region has its own challenges, and sometimes it feels like we're constantly playing catch-up." Musk nodded, his expression thoughtful. "The world is complicated," he said. "But the impact you're making is undeniable. Remember, the greatest movements start with a single step. You've already taken 1,000. As the global initiative gained momentum, Clara found herself reflecting on how far she had come. The trainee who had once doubted her ability to make a difference was now leading a movement that spanned continents. Yet, she remained grounded, always reminding herself of the people who had inspired her along the way. One evening, Clara returned to Kenya to visit one of the original support centers. Aisha greeted her with a warm smile and insisted on showing her the farm's latest expansion. Rows of lush crops stretched as far as the eye could see, a testament to what was possible when people were given the tools to succeed. "None of this would have been possible without you," Aisha said, her voice filled with gratitude. Clara shook her head. "It was your hard work that made it happen," she replied. "We just gave you the resources. You did the rest." As Clara boarded her flight back to the U.S., she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. The mission was far from over, but the progress they had made was undeniable. She thought of the lives they had touched, the partnerships they had forged, and the future they were building together. At the heart of it all was a simple truth: banking, when done right, could be a force for good. And Clara was determined to prove that truth to the world, one community at a time. As Equity First Bank's global reach expanded, so did the complexity of the challenges Clara faced. Each new region brought unique cultural, economic, and logistical hurdles, demanding adaptability and resilience. While the success of the pilot programs in Kenya and other regions had drawn widespread attention, scaling those successes was proving to be an uphill battle. Clara's first significant obstacle came in Southeast Asia, where she aimed to establish a network of mobile banking units and community hubs. The region's bureaucratic red tape and entrenched financial institutions posed formidable barriers. Local banks, wary of losing their dominance, began lobbying against the initiative, portraying it as foreign interference. In one particularly tense meeting with a group of government officials, Clara found herself under scrutiny. The lead official, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Lim, questioned the motives behind Equity First Bank's expansion. "How can we trust that your initiative is in our country's best interest?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Clara took a deep breath, her mind racing to frame her response. "Mr. Lim," she began, her voice calm but firm, "we're not here to compete with local banks. We're here to fill gaps they can't address. Our focus is on underserved communities, people who have been excluded from the traditional banking system. By collaborating with your government and local institutions, we can empower these communities without undermining existing players." Her words were met with silence, the tension in the room palpable. Finally, Mr. Lim leaned back in his chair, his expression softening. "Collaboration over competition," he mused. "It's an intriguing approach. Let's see if your actions match your words." The negotiation was a breakthrough, allowing Clara's team to establish a foothold in the region. But it was only the beginning of a long process of building trust and proving the initiative's value. Back at headquarters, Clara found herself grappling with another challenge: the relentless demands of leadership. Long hours, constant travel, and the weight of responsibility were taking their toll. While she was deeply committed to the mission, she couldn't ignore the growing strain on her personal life. One evening, during a rare moment of quiet, Musk called her for a check-in. His voice, always calm and measured, was a source of reassurance. "You're doing remarkable work, Clara," he said. "But I've noticed you're pushing yourself too hard. Sustainability isn't just for the mission, it's for you too." Clara sighed, the exhaustion evident in her tone. "I don't want to let anyone down," she admitted. Musk's reply was gentle but firm. Leadership isn't just about doing everything yourself. It's about inspiring others to carry the mission forward. Trust your team, Clara. Delegate. Set boundaries. The work will continue, and you'll be stronger for it. His advice struck a chord. Clara began making changes, delegating more responsibilities to her team and carving out time for herself. She realized that leading by example also meant showing her team the importance of balance. Meanwhile, the initiative's impact continued to grow. In rural Vietnam, Clara's team launched a community banking hub in partnership with local leaders. The hub provided microloans tailored to the needs of small-scale farmers and artisans, many of whom had never interacted with a formal financial institution. One such artisan was Mai, a weaver who created intricate textiles but struggled to expand her business due to lack of capital. Through the hub, Mai secured a loan to purchase additional looms and hire apprentices. Within months, her business flourished, and she began exporting her products to neighboring provinces. For the first time, I feel like my work is valued, Mai told Clara during a visit. This isn't just a loan. It's a lifeline. Stories like Mai's fueled Clara's determination. Despite the obstacles, the mission's successes were tangible and deeply personal. However, not every region welcomed the changes with open arms. In one city, a prominent local bank launched a smear campaign against Equity First Bank, accusing it of exploiting vulnerable communities for profit. The accusations stung, but Clara refused to be derailed. She called a press conference to address the allegations head-on. Standing before a room full of reporters, she spoke with unwavering conviction. Our mission has always been to empower communities, not exploit them, she said. We operate transparently and with the highest ethical standards. The lives we've touched and the trust we've earned speak louder than any baseless accusations. The press conference turned the tide, garnering public support and exposing the local bank's attempt to discredit the initiative. Clara's composure and authenticity in the face of adversity solidified her reputation as a leader of integrity. As the global initiative entered its third year, Clara reflected on the lessons she had learned. The journey had been far from smooth, but each challenge had strengthened her resolve and sharpened her skills. She had come to understand that success wasn't just about implementing systems, it was about building relationships, earning trust, and fostering a culture of inclusion. Musk's mentorship remained a guiding force. During one of their strategy sessions, he shared a piece of advice that stayed with her. Vision is important, he said. But execution is where the magic happens. And execution relies on people. Invest in them, believe in them, and they'll take the mission further than you ever could alone. Clara took his words to heart, focusing on developing her team and empowering them to take ownership of their roles. Marcus, in particular, had grown into a key leader, his passion and strategic thinking driving the initiative forward in Southeast Asia. By the end of the year, the results were undeniable. Equity First Bank's presence had expanded to over 15 countries, serving millions of people who had previously been excluded from the financial system. The mobile banking units and community hubs had become symbols of hope, their impact rippling through communities and changing lives. In one memorable moment, Clara attended the grand opening of a new hub in the Philippines. As she cut the ribbon, surrounded by smiling faces, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey had been challenging, but the rewards were immeasurable. That evening, as she stood on a balcony overlooking the bustling city, Clara received a message from Musk. It was a simple text. Proud of you. The best is yet to come. Clara smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude and hope. The challenges ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, but she knew she wasn't facing them alone. Together, with her team and the communities they served, she was building something that would outlast them all, a legacy of equity, empowerment, and resilience. Equity First Bank had evolved into a global movement, operating in over 20 countries and transforming the lives of millions. The once ambitious experiment had become a beacon of what banking could achieve and driven by values of inclusion, respect, and innovation. At the center of this remarkable journey was Clara, whose leadership had guided the institution from a single struggling branch to a worldwide network of hope. Clara, now a seasoned leader, found herself stepping into a new role, mentor. She knew that the future of Equity First Bank depended on cultivating a new generation of leaders who shared her vision. One of these emerging leaders was Amara, a young woman with the same spark and determination Clara had when she first started. Amara had joined the bank as an intern, quickly proving herself with her sharp mind and unyielding dedication to helping underserved communities. Clara took her under her wing, offering guidance while giving her the freedom to learn and grow. "What made you stick with this, even when it was hard?" Amara asked one afternoon as they reviewed a new initiative to bring financial literacy programs to refugee camps. Clara smiled thoughtfully. "Because I've seen what one act of kindness can do," she said. "It can ripple outward, touching lives in ways you never imagined." That belief kept me going, and it's what I hope to pass on to you. Under Clara's mentorship, Amara spearheaded several innovative projects, including a mobile savings program for women in remote villages. The program not only provided a safe place to save money but also empowered women to take control of their finances and invest in their futures. Watching Amara's confidence grow reminded Clara of her own journey and the mentors who had believed in her along the way. Clara's leadership extended beyond her immediate team. She became a sought-after speaker at global conferences, where she shared the lessons she had learned from building a banking model centered on people, not profits. Her speeches often left audiences inspired, not just by her success, but by the values that had guided her. At one such conference, held in Amsterdam, Clara addressed a room filled with industry leaders, policymakers, and activists. The theme was redefining finance for the future. As Clara stepped onto the stage, the audience fell silent, eager to hear her story. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady but warm. "When I started this journey, I was just a trainee at a small bank. I had no grand ambitions, just a desire to do the right thing. But one act of kindness set me on a path I never could have imagined." She recounted the story of the man in ragged clothes who had walked into her bank years ago, the moment that had changed everything. Her audience hung on every word as she described the challenges and triumphs of building Equity First Bank. "Kindness and courage are not just values," she said. "They are strategies. They are the foundation of sustainable change. One act of kindness can change everything. It can challenge the status quo and inspire others to do the same." Her words sparked a standing ovation. Afterward, attendees approached her with ideas for collaboration and questions about how to implement similar models in their own countries. Clara's story had become a rallying cry for those who believed that finance could be a force for good. While Clara's professional achievements were widely celebrated, she remained deeply committed to the individuals and communities that Equity First Bank served. She often visited branches and community hubs, listening to the stories of people whose lives had been transformed by the bank's initiatives. In Uganda, Clara met a young man named Daniel who had started a solar-powered charging station business with the help of a microloan. His business provided a vital service to his village, where access to electricity was scarce. "You believed in me when no one else would," Daniel said, shaking her hand firmly. "Now, I want to pay it forward." Stories like Daniel's reminded Clara why the mission mattered. Every success was a testament to the power of possibility and the resilience of the human spirit. Despite the accolades and the growing reach of the bank, Clara never lost sight of the challenges that remained. Expanding into new regions often meant confronting systemic inequalities and deeply ingrained biases. But Clara's resilience, and her ability to inspire it in others, ensured that Equity First Bank continued to grow without compromising its values. Her mentorship of Amara and others paid dividends. As Clara prepared to step back from day-to-day operations, she felt confident leaving the mission in the hands of capable leaders who shared her vision. Amara, now leading efforts in several countries, had become a force in her own right, earning the respect of her peers and the communities she served. In her final act as CEO, Clara announced the launch of the Global Equity Initiative, a foundation dedicated to promoting financial inclusion and social equity on an even broader scale. The initiative aimed to fund innovative projects, support local entrepreneurs, and advocate for systemic change in global financial systems. "This isn't an ending," Clara said during the launch event. It's a beginning. Equity First Bank showed us what's possible. Now, the Global Equity Initiative will ensure that the movement continues to grow, touching lives we haven't yet reached. The event marked a new chapter not just for Clara but for the movement she had built. Leaders from around the world pledged their support, vowing to carry forward the work she had started. On her last day in her official role, Clara visited the first community bank she had transformed. The building had been renovated, its once faded exterior now gleaming with new life. Inside, she was greeted by familiar faces and heartfelt gratitude. "You didn't just change the bank," Dan, the branch manager, told her. "You changed all of us. You showed us what was possible." As Clara walked through the bustling lobby, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The mission had always been bigger than her, and now it was in the hands of countless others who believed in the power of kindness, courage, and equity. Years later, Clara stood on the stage at a global summit, reflecting on her journey. She had been invited to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award for her contributions to financial inclusion. As she looked out at the audience, she felt a mix of nostalgia and hope. "I've been asked many times how one person can change the world," she began. "The answer is simple: by choosing to act. One act of kindness, one courageous decision, one step toward equity, these things can ripple outward, touching lives in ways we can't predict." She paused, letting her words sink in. This journey wasn't mine alone. It was shared by every person who believed in the vision, every community that embraced change, and every leader who carried the mission forward. Together, we proved that a better world is possible. The audience rose to their feet, their applause echoing throughout the hall. Clara's legacy was secure, not because of the accolades, but because of the lives she had touched and the change she had inspired. As the applause subsided, Clara stepped off the stage, her heart full. The work was far from over, but she was content knowing that the seeds she had planted would continue to grow, carried forward by those who shared her belief in the power of kindness and courage. Years had passed since Clara and Musk first embarked on their journey to redefine the banking world. Equity First Bank had become synonymous with innovation, inclusion, and integrity, a testament to what was possible when values guided action. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Clara and Musk returned to the park bench where it had all begun, the place where Clara's quiet bravery had sparked a revolution. The park was alive with activity, children playing, joggers passing by, and families enjoying the sunshine. But for Clara and Musk, the bench held a quiet significance, a reminder of how far they'd come. Musk handed Clara a coffee, his expression contemplative as they sat side by side. "Do you ever think about whether we've done enough?" Clara asked, her voice soft but steady. Musk looked out at the bustling park, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We haven't done enough," he said. "But we've done something. And that something has inspired countless others to do more. That's how change works. It starts small but grows in ways you can't predict." Clara nodded, her mind drifting to the countless communities they had touched. From rural villages to urban centers, Equity First Bank had brought more than just financial services. It had brought dignity, hope, and opportunity. Though she had stepped down from her role as CEO, Clara remained deeply involved as an advisor. Her days were filled with mentoring young leaders, collaborating with global organizations, and championing initiatives that aligned with her vision. She found joy in empowering others, knowing that the seeds she had planted were now being nurtured by a new generation. One of her proudest accomplishments was the Global Equity Fellowship, a program she had launched to train and support emerging leaders in underserved communities. The fellowship provided resources, mentorship, and funding for innovative projects aimed at addressing systemic inequities. Clara often traveled to meet with fellows, each encounter reinforcing her belief in the power of grassroots change. During a visit to a fellowship project in the Philippines, Clara met Rosa, a young woman who had used her grant to build a cooperative for local fishermen. The cooperative not only provided better tools and fair wages but also reinvested profits into the community. "I never thought someone like me could make a difference," Rosa told Clara. "But your story showed me that it's possible. Thank you for believing in people like us." Clara's heart swelled with pride. Rosa's words echoed the very essence of what had driven her all these years, the belief that every individual had the potential to create change, given the right support. Back at home, Clara's life had found a quieter rhythm. She cherished moments with family and friends, finding balance in the spaces between her work. Yet, she never lost her sense of purpose. Her story had become a beacon, shared in classrooms, boardrooms, and conferences around the world. At one such event, a university invited Clara to deliver a keynote address to a graduating class. Standing at the podium, she looked out at the sea of eager faces and felt a familiar mix of nerves and excitement. "When I was in your position," she began, "I never imagined I'd be standing here one day. I was just a young woman trying to do the right thing in a system that seemed too big to change. But I've learned that even the smallest actions can create ripples of change." She spoke about the power of empathy, resilience, and integrity, weaving in stories of the people and communities who had inspired her along the way. "The world needs your courage," she concluded. "It needs your kindness. Don't wait for permission to make a difference. Start where you are, with what you have. You might be surprised by how far it takes you." The room erupted in applause, the energy palpable. After the speech, students lined up to thank her, their enthusiasm a reminder that the mission was far from over. Musk, too, continued to support Clara's efforts, though he had largely stepped back from public life. Their bond, forged through shared purpose, remained strong. They often exchanged ideas and reflections, their conversations a source of inspiration for both. "You know," Musk said during one of their talks, "what we've done isn't just about banking. It's about showing people that systems can be changed. That's a legacy worth fighting for." Clara agreed. She had come to see their work as part of a larger movement, one that extended beyond finance to touch every facet of society. The principles of equity and inclusion they championed were now being adopted in industries ranging from education to healthcare. In the years that followed, Clara's influence only grew. She authored a memoir, Ripples of Change, which became a bestseller and was translated into multiple languages. The book chronicled her journey and the lessons she had learned, offering readers a roadmap for creating meaningful impact in their own lives. The memoir inspired countless readers, including a young entrepreneur named Samir, who reached out to Clara with an idea to bring solar-powered banking kiosks to remote areas in India. Impressed by his vision, Clara became his mentor, helping him secure funding and navigate the challenges of scaling his initiative. "Your story gave me the courage to believe this was possible," Samir told her during one of their mentoring sessions. "Now, I want to pass that courage on to others." As Clara neared her 70s, she began to reflect more deeply on the legacy she would leave behind. She often returned to the park bench, finding solace and clarity in the place where it all began. One afternoon, as she sat watching the world go by, she was joined by a young woman carrying a notebook. "Are you Clara Richards?" the woman asked, her voice tinged with awe. Clara smiled. "I am. And you are?" "My name is Elena," the woman said, sitting beside her. "I'm studying social entrepreneurship, and your work has been a huge inspiration to me. I hope to build something like Equity First Bank one day." Clara's heart warmed. She saw a spark in Elena that reminded her of herself all those years ago. "The world needs more people like you," she said. "Start where you are, and don't be afraid to take risks. You might be surprised by what you can achieve." As the sun began to set, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but it had also been rich with purpose and joy. She knew that the ripples she and Musk had started would continue to spread, carried forward by the countless individuals they had inspired. Even in the smallest acts, Clara thought, there is the power to change the world. Her story, one of courage, integrity, and humanity, would endure, a reminder that every ripple, no matter how small, could create waves of transformation.